Why should you stop using the word mehr? For the same reason that you would never want to say in English, the cake is expensiver than expected, or my book is interestinger than yours, or today is restorativer than yesterday. These sentences make our ears bleed, and that's exactly what happens to Germans if you were to say, der Kuchen ist mehr teuer als erwartet. Mein Buch ist mehr interessant als deines. Heute ist mehr erholsam als gestern. The problem with all of these is the usage of the word mehr. In this video, we will look at when you should and shouldn't use this important word. The good news is that you can dismiss out of hand the possibility of ever saying more interesting or more exciting in German because mehr will never be used with an adjective. So we will in a little bit look at when you should use the word mehr, but first, if we can't use mehr in combination with an adjective to say more expensive, more interesting, etc., then how do we communicate not just that the cake is expensive, but that it's more expensive than some other dessert or that the book is more How do we do that in German? As always, first refreshing ourselves on basic English grammar is the key to more quickly and easily understanding how the same concept functions in German. So in English, we have 3 forms of adjectives. We have base forms, comparative forms, and superlative forms, such as strong, stronger, strongest. In these examples, Bob is strong, Pete is stronger than Bob, John is the strongest in the group. In English, we have 2 ways that we can work with these adjective forms. So the first formula is where we add an ER or an EST for the comparative and superlative forms. So in the examples, right, that's where you can see bigger, also with the extra G, right? We might have added consonants in there. Smaller, hotter, also with that extra T, right? Those are all the comparative forms. Or else biggest, right? You see the EST, smallest, hottest, right? That's the one way that this works in English, and this is usually the case for 1 or 2 syllable adjectives. But if you have an adjective that is 3 syllables or more, it's going to follow a different formula where we leave the base adjectives alone and instead we put a more or a most in front of them. For example, the cake is more delicious than the pie. The baby is more beautiful than the dog. Today is more comfortable than yesterday. This cake is the most delicious dessert I've ever had. Your baby is the most beautiful in the family. Today is the most comfortable day this summer. So right now, we can see why it is that English speakers get into trouble when they are speaking German. It's a translation issue, right? Because we would say more expensive and more interesting and more restorative. English speakers just translate this into German and come up with the mehr teuer and mehr interessant and mehr erholsam. That is wrong. But we don't want to speak German like English speakers. We want to speak German like German speakers. And in fact, making the comparative and superlative forms of adjectives in German is easier than it is in English because in German, there's just one way. All German adjectives use the same comparative and superlative forms. When our comparative adjective comes in front of a noun, then it's still the base plus the ER with an umlaut, and now simply a declension added to it. That's not so bad. The superlative changes a bit though. We leave out the altogether, then it's the base plus just an ST, maybe with that filler E in front of it, But there's no en because in place of that, we have to have a more specific declension. So if you check out these examples, we have in the nominative case, so the subject of the sentence, der größere Kuchen ist leckerer. The bigger cake is more delicious. Das kleinere Baby finde ich schöner. I think the smaller baby is more beautiful. Der heißere Tag war mir angenehmer. The hotter day was more pleasant to me. And then in the superlative, we have das da ist der größte Kuchen, den ich je gesehen habe. Sarah ist das kleinste Baby in der Nachbarschaft. Heute ist der heißeste Tag des Sommers. And so you can again see that actually in place of the we may have to have an article, right? Or we will have to have an article, and then it's the base adjective plus ste or st declension. They happen to be STEs here because we're in the nominative case. In this first set, we have the standalone comparative adjectives, or we could consider this the base form for comparative adjectives specifically, where we have größer, kleiner, heißer. Then we see those exact same forms in the second set, but always with the declension added because these are attributive adjectives. They're coming directly in front of nouns. Then with the superlative side by side, when it's standing on its own, that's when we use this formula with the right? The am größten, am kleinsten, am heißesten, right? And always with the sten, right? But then if it has to come in front of a noun, it changes and we'll use an article, der größte, das kleinste, der heißeste. So now we know the right formulas for communicating the idea of more expensive, more interesting, more restorative, right? That it's not going to be using mehr, right? Everything we were just talking about. But I promised you at the beginning of this video that we would also look at when do you use the word mehr? And that's what we're going to look at right now. Mehr doesn't come in front of adjectives. We talked about that earlier, but it is used to modify nouns and verbs, as in ich möchte mehr Kaffee, bitte, right? It's coming right in front of the noun Kaffee. Ich arbeite nicht mehr. I don't work anymore, where now it's modifying the verb arbeiten, to work. Some additional examples, here all with nouns versus here all with verbs. Wir brauchen mehr Zeit für das Projekt. Der Junge will mehr Schokolade. Sie hat nur 5 Euro. Sie hat kein Geld mehr. Du solltest mehr lernen. Sie liest mehr für die Schule. Das Kind spielt nicht mehr. As an ultra bonus, wanted to give you a heads up that many students actually confuse the word mehr for the word oft. So a few examples to show you the difference here. Ich gehe nicht oft ins Fitnessstudio means I don't go to the gym often, right? As opposed to ich gehe nicht mehr ins Fitnessstudio means I don't go to the gym anymore. So both of these sentences are grammatically correct and you might use them in a particular context, but the difference between nicht oft and nicht mehr is significant between not going to the gym often versus not anymore ever. And it's the same thing in this final example set. The difference between saying ich esse oft Hühnchen, I often eat chicken, or ich esse mehr Hühnchen means that you eat more chicken than you used to. In the middle of this video, when we were looking at the adjective formulas used in German, and especially how we have the one variant, the one option that involves declensions, you may have started feeling rather confused, and that would be understandable because the whole topic of declensions in German is huge. I mean, absolutely massive. It's also completely central to speaking German. You have to know this stuff. But it's so big, I could only just touch on it in this video, but in my flagship paid course, German Foundations, talking about declensions, everything you need to know about declensions is a central theme of that course. So if you need more information or more practice with declensions, then I encourage you to look into my paid course, German Foundations. If in the meantime you want to continue learning with me here on YouTube, the next video looks at the words viel and viele, which are also very often confused with each other, and the difference, the answer, the solution also lies with declensions. See you in that video next.